Influence, presence, charisma. We tend to think of these as some kind of magical quality, something you're either born with or you're not. But what if that's completely wrong? What if influence isn't magic, but a system, an architecture that you can actually learn, that you can reverse engineer, and that you can build from the ground up? Today, we're not just talking about social skills. Oh no, we are dissecting the very anatomy of a high-status persona. Let's get into it.
Just think about that for a second. This isn't about finding yourself. It's about building yourself. And this quote, it really gets to the core of what we're exploring today. Your presence, the way you show up in the world, is a deliberate act of construction. It is not an accident of birth. It's a conscious design that you, and only you, can control. This is the foundational principle for anyone who wants to command a room, not just, stand in it. And this leads us right into the central paradox of presence, the idea that the most charismatic people you know, they might not be the most naturally gifted. They might just be the most skilled architects of their own identity. They're operating from a master blueprint, a hidden system that we're about to make very, very visible.
Look, most of us believe that charisma is a gift, but the reality is that high-status individuals are often operating from a playbook. They get that first impressions are everything, but it goes deeper. They understand that those impressions are all about pattern recognition. So what do? They essentially learn to use a group's own mental shortcuts against them. They present a set of signals so clear, so powerful, that the group has no choice but to categorize them as a leader before they've even said a single word.
So, if this blueprint exists, why do so many smart, capable people feel completely invisible? Well, this leads us to something I call the authenticity trap. And it's a problem that I'm willing to bet sounds very familiar to a lot of you, even if you couldn't quite put a name to it. Let's be honest, it's infuriating, right? You've done the work, you've got the data, you know the right answer. But all eyes are on someone else, someone who might not have your substance, but who just projects authority. This is what we call the status ceiling. It's that invisible barrier where all your hard work and intelligence just stop translating into presence and influence. You're being judged not on what's in your mind, but on your interface.
Okay, so look at this contrast. On the left, you've got the high-functioning ghost. This is the person whose signals are totally unmanaged. They're fidgeting, their voice going up at the end of a sentence, they're broadcasting accidental signals, and usually those signals are of submission. They've got what's called narrative vulnerability, which means they let other people define their story and their status just slowly erodes. Now, on the right, the architect of presence does the exact opposite. They deploy curated signals. They achieve executive sovereignty, where their external presence finally matches their internal competence. The real takeaway here is realizing that ignoring your persona isn't being authentic, it's being unmanaged.
So how do you move from being a ghost to becoming an architect? Well, this is where we shift from the problem to the strategy. And this isn't random, it's a 4-stage mechanism. It's a system designed to build a high-status persona and make your authority feel completely natural to everyone else. It's called the Signal-Congruence Loop.
The whole loop begins with a foundation of stillness. The very first stage is called Kinetic De-Vibration, because before you can add any new, powerful signals, you have to get rid of all the noisy, low-status ones you're already broadcasting without even realizing it. Here's the key insight, the real leverage point. In any social hierarchy, the person who moves the least is almost always seen as having the most control. Think about all your unconscious movements, the nervous fidgeting, the darting eyes, the constant head nodding. Think of it all as static on a radio. These are status leaks. They're noisy signals of anxiety. Kinesic De-Vibration is the conscious act of tuning that signal to pure clarity by plugging those leaks. By establishing a baseline of physical stillness, you are non-verbally screaming that you are calm, you're collected, and you're in complete control. This is the first step in training the room to see you differently. All right, once you've established that baseline of stillness, you need a framework to build on. And this brings us to step 2, archetypal anchoring. And this illustrates a powerful secret. You don't have to invent a compelling personality from scratch. You can just rent a proven one. Our brains are wired for shortcuts. They have to be, to make sense of the world quickly. Archetypal anchoring uses this to your advantage. You pick a high-status archetype that works for you. I mean, think about the late Steve Jobs, who so perfectly embodied the visionary. The black turtleneck, the minimalist slides, the dramatic pauses. He didn't just have ideas, he signaled visionary with every single choice. You do the same. You consciously align all your signals, your clothes, the words you choose, the way you hold your gaze with that archetype. What you're doing is giving everyone's brain a simple, clear category to just slot you into. And they will reward you by giving you the status that comes with it, often before you've even had to prove a thing.
All right, now for stage 3, which is maybe the most counterintuitive and powerful of them all: strategic informational scarcity. After mastering stillness and anchoring to an archetype, the very next step is to control the flow of information. It's about the power of saying less.
Most people, when they feel insecure, they over-explain. They just talk and talk and talk, trying to prove their worth. The architect does the opposite. They use pauses, they answer questions directly but briefly. They create intentional gaps in their story. And this, right here, is where the trap closes. See, human brains hate a vacuum. They are uncomfortable with ambiguity. So when they're faced with a composed, still person who doesn't reveal everything, our brains automatically start to fill in those gaps. And because you're already signaling high status, the brain fills those gaps with positive stuff, projections of competence, of power, of depth. This is what we call the mystery premium.
The final piece of the loop is environmental cueing. This is where your environment and the very objects in it start to do the signaling work for you, reinforcing your persona 24/7. Think about it. When you're on a video call, what is your background signal? A carefully curated bookshelf signals intellect, a generic virtual background, it signals nothing. Consider the quality of the pen you use in a meeting, or choosing to take an important meeting at a high-end coffee shop instead of the office cafeteria. These are all micro-signals that complete the picture of your constructed identity, making it feel solid and real without you ever having to say a word. So we have the 4-stage loop, but why is this system so devastatingly effective? To really get that, we need to look under the hood at the deep psychological mechanics that make it all work. Why do our brains so readily accept this constructed persona?
The primary engine here is a cognitive bias called the halo effect. Our brains are, frankly, lazy. They're cognitive misers, always looking for ways to save energy. When you consistently broadcast clear, high-status signals, you're showing one strong positive trait. The brain sees this, and to save itself the hard work of a full analysis, it just assumes other positive traits must exist too. She looks composed, so she must be intelligent and competent and trustworthy. A clear, high-status persona makes social categorization easy, and on a subconscious level, our brains really appreciate that.
But here's the critical question, right? What about when we get that little flicker of doubt? When we suspect that this persona might just be a well-rehearsed performance? Why do we still tend to just go along with it?
This quote nails the answer perfectly. Cognitive dissonance. It is psychologically painful for us to hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. Like, this person appears very high status, but I think this might be an act. So to get rid of that discomfort, our brain chooses the easier path. It creates a story to justify our first impression. We literally tell ourselves, well, they must be important, otherwise why would they be so composed? We'd rather rationalize our own perception than admit we're being managed by a signaling blueprint.
Okay, so understanding this system isn't just about learning how to use it. It's also about learning how to defend against it, and how to reclaim your own cognitive sovereignty. This is where we go from theory to pure, practical application. It's time to move from being accidental to architected. So how do you actually do it? You start with a signal audit. First, record a video of yourself in a meeting and just watch it back. Find your personal status leaks. Then get to work. A huge one is eliminating upspeak. You know that rising tone that makes a statement sound like a question? It signals uncertainty. Kill it. Stabilize your hands, keep them still or use them for deliberate gestures. And practice archetypal congruence by studying a role model, not to copy them, but to understand the language of authority so you can speak it in your own way. And finally, learn to spot this in other people. Ask a sharp, unexpected question and just watch their body language. If their composure shatters, you'll know their persona is probably just a performance.
This slide right here is a crucial rule to live by. On the left is what you should do. Practice selective transparency. This means you maintain a high privacy baseline. You control the story. You preserve that mystery premium. On the right is what to avoid at all costs, the over-disclosure trap. This is when you try to win favor by revealing your insecurities too early. Look, vulnerability has its place, but in the early stages of establishing status, it just broadcasts neediness and totally undermines your authority. High-status personas are built on curated information, not radical, premature honesty. So we've dissected the system, we've looked at the psychology, and we've laid out the practical steps. This brings us to the final and most powerful takeaway of this entire framework. It's about fundamentally reframing how we think about authenticity and power. Let this statement really sink in, because it turns a popular cultural idea completely on its head.
We're always told to just be authentic and success will follow. But this framework suggests the exact opposite is true. In a social hierarchy, authenticity, the freedom to be your full, unmanaged self, is a luxury. It's a prize afforded only to those who have already secured their position. Until then, your persona is both your shield and your bridge. It is the tool you use to get to the place where you no longer need the tool.
And that is the ultimate takeaway, the bottom line. True power isn't about finding yourself, it's about designing yourself. It's about understanding that in the game of influence, you are constantly sending signals, whether you mean to or not. The only choice you have is whether those signals will be accidental or architected. Stop waiting to be noticed. Stop hoping your hard work will one day speak for itself. Stop asking for permission to be seen. Curate the signals.